I'm so pleased to have Anibor Kragha, the Executive Secretary of African Refiners and Distributors Association. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be back.
How does ARDA plan to collaborate with the AEB to finance and implement downstream projects effectively?
Well, thank you for the question. I think the best thing we can do is help our members start to put in place projects that ultimately will pass the bankability requirements of the African Energy Bank. So the good thing is the African Energy Bank is trying to raise about $5 billion in the first instance. Our role is to make our members' projects be competitive enough to at least have a portion of that. We know we're not going to get as much as the upstream, but our role is to say, listen, at least if it's 10, 15% of that, have that reserved for downstream projects. And what does that mean? We need to ensure that we work with our members who are regulators to have the right regulatory frameworks in place to support the investments. And this is over the investment lifespan, not election cycles, which is something we need to watch. We need to ensure that they have clear and well done project preparation to define the scope, cost, schedule, and economics of the project. We need to make sure we build ESG requirements into those projects so that because that's part of bankability today. And of course, very near and dear to our hearts, have the right people to be able to deliver the project over the lifespan as envisioned. Training, human capacity development, and all of that. So with all of that, we believe that we'll be able to make a strong case that part of that $5 billion must be kept and reserved for downstream projects. And we want to put together a register of Pan-African downstream projects for the African Energy Bank.
And what steps is ARDA taking to attract private investment in Africa's downstream sector? And can you share any recent successes?
So what I just said is exactly what we're doing. We're working with our members to build this Pan-African register, because the bottom line is we need to be able to come to the market with projects, because capital is agnostic, right? It's looking for a return. So the idea is to present this register of projects, and we're working with a very reputable consulting firm. They don't like me to say it publicly, but we're working on putting together this register that we can bring forward. And I think, because one of my, I'm the head of the ARDA financing work group, and the leader, and our role is to find financing for this project. So we've actually started incorporating in ARDA Week an investment forum, where we actually bring our members, because what used to happen was, when I talk to my members, they say we cannot find financing. When I talk to the financiers, they say we cannot find projects. So we started bringing them together alongside regulators, alongside banks, development banks like the Afrexim Bank, AFC, and also commercial banks like Standard Bank, Mauritius Commercial Bank, to have a real conversation about how to make their projects viable. I think from the best example I can give is the Cabinda refinery in Angola. I'm sure you heard last month. Oh yeah, we're in October now. It's Happy Independence Day in Nigeria. It's 1st of October. But last month, you saw that the Cabinda refinery kicked off and you're supposed to get products by the end of this year. Why is that important? That's the first refinery that really went through a really rigorous project financing process, supported by Afrexim and all of that. And part of one of the things they had to do was create an end-to-end plan on how to build the lowest possible carbon footprint refinery, but also how they were going to go from a traditional refinery to a biorefinery over the lifespan of the project. And I think, my deputy lead for a while led that project for GemCorp, and he was able to share that with my members. So that's, I think, one of the best examples I would give.
And what are the main challenges to bankable downstream projects, and which financing models is ARDA exploring?
I think the biggest one for our members really would be ESG requirements. And what do I mean by that? When you talk of traditional ESG requirements, you're talking of reducing carbon footprint. Well, we're just trying to run and make fuel in the first place, right? So we're actually trying to build up our run times, our capacity utilization, and all of that. And in today's world, where you have to have clear ESG requirements, we're trying to ensure that our members can future-proof their refineries by putting those investments in place. And for us, ESG actually also includes cleaner, lower sulfur fuels. So we're on a drive to ensure that happens. And an example I can give is the SIR refinery in Cote d'Ivoire, in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, where ARDA is based. And they're doing an excellent job in leading that narrative, in driving. And they're actually putting in place an investment plan to achieve AFRI 5 fuel, which is 50 ppm.
And how can project developers integrate ESG principles into African downstream projects? And can you give examples of successful initiatives?
So I just did the SIR refinery. The first thing is, are you doing cleaner, lower sulfur fuel? Because that's one of the key things. Another thing is starting to put in place models to reduce the carbon footprint of the refinery. One of the projects we're very proud of that we worked with with Vitol, one of our partners, working with one of our sponsors, working with advising consultants and the SIR refinery again, where they identified projects that would reduce the carbon footprint of the refinery by about 30%. And we're able to take steps towards implementing that. That's one of the things we're very, very excited about. And we believe that the end goal is to make a case for carbon credits from those actions. And that could become part of the financing toolkit of our members ultimately.
And how does ARDA support policy alignment and regional collaboration among African countries?
Well, we engage at multiple levels from the African Union Commission down to ECOWAS and all the other regional economic communities. And we do that because one of the key things we are really advocating is what I mentioned earlier, which is harmonized Pan-African specs. When you look across Africa, would you imagine you have 11 different grades of gas, oil, or diesel, ranging from 10 ppm sulfur to 10,000 ppm of sulfur. You have 12 different grades of gas, oil, or diesel, ranging from 10 ppm to 2,500 ppm. So the question is, how do we harmonize that so we have one clear spec across the continent? So we've been working hard with the African Union Commission to get that done at that level. But on a regional level, we worked with ECOWAS to get to 50 ppm. We're very proud of how that's done. The East Africa Community, EAC, has been, we're actually a pioneer in adopting that. And we understand that, I believe from the first of next year, they're even going to 10 ppm. So our role is to advocate for that because that helps make the case for investments. If you're actually going to make investment, it makes sense that you future-proof your investment. So I don't want to invest in a refinery, for example, one asset that's producing fuels that do not meet the specs in my region, because then you're limiting the market that you can support, and thereby limiting your upside of your investment.
And just my final question, we're here at African Energy Week.
Yes.
What do you hope to achieve while you're here? And are there any specific projects or partnerships that you plan to highlight?
Oh, well, my brother NJ he has the catchphrase, drill, baby, drill. What I'm here to tell people is, for African energy security, you have to refine, baby, refine. Okay? We talked earlier about ESG and all that. I want everybody to realize that about 3% of global carbon emissions come from shipping. So when you ship crude oil to another country and refine products and bring it back, you're contributing to actually this carbon emissions issue. So our role is to say, one, you need to start looking at, from an energy security standpoint, adding refinery capacity on the continent. The downstream is important, okay? Everybody who's here, yourself included, you came from where? Where did you come from to Cape Town? Johannesburg?
Johannesburg.
Okay. Your plane didn't use crude oil. Your Uber that you took here doesn't use crude oil, all right? 90 to 95% of Africans will never see a barrel of crude oil. But everybody must use gasoline, jet fuel, LPG for clean cooking, and so on and so forth. So our role here is to advocate for the downstream, that we must have a seat at the table always. And that's one of the things that I really love about coming here, because I've been here from the very first African Energy Week. And one of the points of collaboration that we really enjoy with the African Energy Chamber is recognizing that the downstream is important. So I support them not just here, Angola Oil and Gas, MSGBC, and other conferences across Africa. And they come to support us as well, because Africa produces about 5.3 million barrels of crude oil total, but our refining capacity is nowhere near even half of that. So they come to support us to say, we need the crude oil for you to refine, but we recognize that the downstream is important. So a lot of countries come and always talk about, we're the #1 oil and gas producer. My role here is to say, I need you guys to be the #1 value adder, okay? And one of the key partnerships I like to focus on is the OPEC Africa Energy Dialogue. And this was started by the late Dr. Barkindo when he was OPEC Secretary General during COVID. And brings together OPEC, but has the African Energy Commission, covering Africa, APO, the African Petroleum Producers Organization, for the upstream, and ARDA for the downstream. And the role is to look at how we can have a collaborative, robust, intra-African oil and gas industry where we can maximize the crude oil that's produced and maximize what is refined on the continent, add value, and put in place the infrastructure to meet not just the coastal countries, but also the landlocked countries as well. So that's going very well. We meet at least once a year, and we support each other's initiatives and ensure that we're engaging consistently so that we can advocate. An example I like to give, Congo-Brazzaville. I was there for the first Congo International Energy Forum this year, and excited, they even talked about it here, they're trying to go from 250,000 barrels a day to 500,000 barrels a day. But my ARDA Executive Committee member, Koraf, is at 25,000 barrels a day of refining capacity. Well, guess what? You have oil, you have Kinshasa. Forget the DRC. Kinshasa is almost next door with 30 million people. So you have oil, you have the market, and you have an existing refinery. My role is to highlight at conferences like this is you need to take that refinery to at least 100,000 barrels because you have all the enabling conditions to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure as always. See you next year.